Okay.
You had mentioned something about the CIA time travel program, something or other.
Yes.
Can you say a little bit more about that?
My understanding, and now I have to preface this with this is secondhand knowledge, and it is my understanding that the name of the time travel program that the CIA is running is Marvel. I know, laugh if you want, it sounds silly, but at the same time, we're pretty silly and we have a history of making some funny programs. So, yeah, that was communicated to me back in 2021 directly from an active intelligence officer, and it has haunted me ever since. It makes everything come into question for me, including the NHI beings themselves and the nature of consciousness and what we could evolve into in the future and the kinds of bodies that we may have, and whether or not what we're really dealing with is interdimensional, like time wizards who have learned how to come and go and talk to us pretty much at their will.
Yeah, that would be. And then is this like a program that they developed in the past, or something that they developed in the future? And or what other information do you know about the program?
I don't know very much about it, other than that it is, or it was at the time, an active program and was most likely attached to some of the legacy programs that we've had. So I think we've really been careful about the direction that we take with respect to the phenomena, and I believe that their ability to move through time and space has become one of our number one priorities for being able to effectively do ourselves. and survive it and understand it.
Okay. All right. All right. Some technical difficulties there, but welcome back to Through a Glass Darkly Radio. You're listening to us on United Public Radio. The intro music is Mark of the Doomslayer by Karl at White Bat Audio. And good to see you all tonight. I am recording this on June 14th, 2025. Because I will not be here to record a live video. So, and the topic I have, there's not a lot of information out there. So it's a little sparse. However, the first notion of this Project Marvel operation kind of came out from that interview that I just showed with Anjali that I had earlier this year, at least as far as I know. That might have been the first public confirmation of it. So I wanted to at least put that out as a bit of a teaser, but just a reminder, feel free to comment, obviously like, subscribe, share, but I will not be as interactive tonight because this is a pre-recording, because I will be in Chattanooga, Tennessee when this airs. So I'm going to miss you all, but there's just no way I could have done this in a hotel room. Well, I could have, but I don't want to have to ship a green screen and all that stuff. It would lower the production quality of these things. Not that, we're just kind of amateur hour anyway, but that's kind of where I'm going with it. The other thing that I'm going to kind of comment on, and I'm going to be very careful about this because I wrote my master's thesis on this, people. So, and my thesis advisor became Obama's Secretary of Defense. So I looked at exactly the operation that Israel foolishly, I will say, attempted to pull off itself. But I looked at it back in 2006, so almost 20 years ago. And at the time, we had massive resources in the Middle East. We had just kind of invaded, in 3 years into the Iraq War. We had all kinds of resources in there. I looked at a variety of different options, from the Khuzestan gambit, which would be to send U.S. troops into southwestern Iraq, seize their oil fields, and basically hold them hostage. It was like a 9,000 square kilometer area. I looked at a precision strike on their reactors and stuff like that. And then I looked at a strategic bombing campaign. There were elements of sabotage in there as well, which kind of is what happened with Stuxnet. I believe that was a joint U.S.-Israeli team, and I have good reason to believe that, where you kind of had a sabotage operation. But in hindsight of just watching all my brothers and sisters, some of whom didn't come home, I looked at kind of the impact of all the wars that we've been fighting in the Middle East, and we never seem to benefit as a country. Our soldiers die. There's only one country that ever accrues a benefit, and it's always Israel. So this time, I think the mad dog of the Middle East is going to have to handle it on their own. I'm not a fan of Iran, or make no mistake, the Iranians are not the good guys, but this is getting old, right? This whole, they can't have a nuclear weapon, back in 2006, I would have agreed. But now, I actually think it's probably a good thing for them to get a nuclear weapon, just to at least calm down the mad dog of the Middle East, right? There is no way Israel would have attacked Iran if they had a nuclear weapon. And there's no way Iran would have targeted Israel if they had a nuclear weapon, right? It's just not like nuclear proliferation is a huge problem, but Israel it's out of control right now. It's absolutely out of control. And I think the responsible adults in the United States just need to say, look, we're not, you're not writing checks anymore that you expect American bodies to cash. We're just, again, I'm just not taking sides on this one. I'm sitting this one out. Okay. And, you should too. All this rhetoric that this is self-defense, this and that. Like, the Israelis attacked the Iranians first. It's pretty black and white. You can argue about October 7th and all this stuff, right? You don't think Mossad's in Iran doing the same stuff? Remember those motorcycle bombs that were, motorcyclists would come up and put a sticky bomb on a nuclear scientist, and they're talking about, oh, we don't target civilians. What do you think a nuclear scientist is? They're a civilian. So, again, I'm not taking sides on this one. We should not be underwriting the mad dog of the Middle East to do whatever it wants, right? It's just not our fight anymore. Enough is enough. We're done. All right. So with that, if I didn't drive anybody off, I can understand, but that's my position. And, it also sickens me to see all these bribed politicians and corrupt politicians who are just putting out the AIPAC line, right? It's so obvious, guys. It's just so obvious. Just stop it. Stop it, right? We're not sending troops over to Ireland, right, to Northern Ireland to fight the British. Like, I would have loved that when I was younger, right? But, like, it's not our fight. Just like Northern Ireland was not our fight. Okay? And plus, nobody would have agreed on which side were the good guys in the United States at the time anyway. So, and I honestly, I can't see who the good guy is in this case either. They're both, it's like one side is the Gestapo and the other side is the NKVD, right? Just let them go at each other. Not my problem. But I think what Israel is quickly figuring out is this isn't just some Arab country. Like, these are the Iranians are serious people, right? So good luck. That's all I can say. Good luck. Thoughts and prayers. But we're not cash. We're not. Daddy's not going to pay for this little ill-advised military expedition anymore. All right, so let's at least get started. By the way, I'm going to start saying this all the time because I just don't trust YouTube at all. So if you think you are a subscriber to this channel, please do me a favor and check to make sure that you are still subscribed, because there's at least one person so far who thought he was subscribed and YouTube unsubscribed him. All right. And my channel has actually been doing better on views, but on subscriptions, it's like something's weighing it down. And I think it's just YouTube shenanigans. I don't know why YouTube would do that, because it harms their credibility. But I'm just going to start probably pivoting a little bit more to Spotify. Like, again, as I mentioned in the last podcast, I made 67% more on Spotify last month, and I think for 3 months running I've been doing better on Spotify with and it's not like up and down, like manipulated algorithmic views. It's just steady and up and to the right, like it should be. So I just have more trust in that. It's a Swedish company. The Swedes like to maintain rules and stuff like that. The clowns at YouTube don't. They just favor, lots of favoritism. You get points for if you're this group or you're that group or this or that, right? They don't play those games in Sweden. So at least I hope they don't. Anyway, let's let's get started on today's topic. Okay. Time Travel Labyrinth, unraveling the CIA's alleged Project Marvel. Welcome to a deep dive into the... Oh, and by the way, I come up with the ideas, I come up with some prompts, but AI does the deep research and produces the script. Okay, if you don't like that, I understand. My other interviews and everything else on my regular channel is not scripted like this, but given the commitments and time that I have, I sometimes do this on the radio show. So take it or leave it, but this channel is about truth, and I just want to be completely open to you, unlike our government, unlike anybody in institutional power right now, unlike the media, etc. So here we go. So welcome to a deep dive into one of the strangest conspiracy theories in the intelligence world. Today we explore Project Marvel, an alleged CIA program whispered about in fringe circles for its supposed work on time travel, quantum manipulation, and even seeing the future. In this particular episode, we'll journey through the timeline of secret projects and rumors, from the Cold War's psychic experiments and the Montauk Project to DARPA's Project Pegasus and the CIA's Stargate remote viewing program, all the way to the enigmatic Project Marvel in recent years. Along the way, we'll examine declassified files, whistleblower claims, and experiencer accounts with a critical eye, citing sources and separating fact from fantasy. Is there any truth to these tales of temporal tampering, or is Project Marvel entirely speculative? Let's find out. Montauk Project, Cold War time travel conspiracies, 1970s to 1980s. All right, there's a derelict radar tower at Camp Hero, Montauk, which is the rumored epicenter of the Montauk Project's bizarre experiments. And this real Cold War radar installation has fueled decades of conspiracy tales. And that's where our first stop is, Camp Hero Air Force Station at Montauk, Long Island. The inspiration for the Netflix series Stranger Things. In 1992, Preston Nichols published The Montauk Project, Experiments in Time, claiming that secret Cold War experiments at Camp Hero in the 1970s to 80s involved time travel, mind control, psychic children, and even contact with aliens. According to Nichols and others, Camp Hero's underground labs were a continuation of MK-Ultra and other CIA projects, pushing into extreme territory, using kidnapped children in psychological warfare tests, opening portals through time, and creating Montauk boys with psychic abilities. These claims, though fantastical, took on a life of their own in UFO and paranormal circles. Investigators have tried to sort fact from fiction. Filmmaker Christopher Garantano, in his 2014 Montauk Chronicles documentary, interviewed men who said they survived Montauk's experiments. Garantano even used ground-penetrating radar and claimed to find evidence of large underground structures not on official maps. He believes something strange happened at Montauk, even if not exactly what Nichols described. Quote, "Forget all the aliens and MK-Ultra crap. I think there was some type of experimentation out there using kids or teenagers, maybe runaways," end quote, Garantano told the press. One local researcher posited that wild Montauk tales might have all been a cover for mundane secrets, like possibly a hidden nuclear reactor buried on base in the 1950s, with outrageous rumors seeded to deflect attention. Conspiracy lore also ties Montauk to earlier mysteries. Notably, Montauk is said to connect with the famous Philadelphia experiment of 1943. where the U.S. Navy allegedly made a ship of invisible and, in legend, accidentally teleported it. In the 1980s, a man named Al Bielek came forward claiming repressed memories of working on both the Philadelphia experiment and Montauk. Bielek asserted that a 1983 experiment in Montauk actually opened a time wormhole back to 1943, linking the two projects across 40 years. It's a wild story. Bielek said he himself jumped off the Navy ship Eldridge in 1943 and fell through a time tunnel, emerging at Montauk decades in the future. While there's no hard evidence for any of this, the Montauk mythos grew to encompass a whole saga of time warps and fringe science. Another intriguing thread is Montauk's proximity to advanced physics labs. Just 60 miles away is Brookhaven National Laboratory, home to particle accelerators. Conspiracists love this detail. Some claim Brookhaven was involved in Montauk's experiments, or that equipment was moved from Brookhaven to Camp Hero during the late 1960s. Both sites, they point out, are high-security facilities that, quote, feature mind-blowing equipment rewriting what we know about cosmic matter, time, space, and so much more, end quote. In fact, Brookhaven's particle collider, similar in concept to CERN's Large Hadron Collider, has been fancifully linked to Montauk's alleged time portal. Local papers even noted the coincidence that both Brookhaven and Montauk have rumors of interdimensional vortices, or gates into other dimensions. Needless to say, there is no official confirmation that Camp Hero housed any time gate, only that the base was closed in 1981 and later opened as a state park. No underground alien labs have ever been found, despite many furtive expeditions by enthusiasts. All right, I'm just checking to make sure that I'm not on mute and I didn't waste a ton of time on that. All right, let me continue. The Montauk Project remains a modern myth, a chilling campfire tale at the crossroads of Cold War paranoia and sci-fi imagination. It serves as a backdrop as we move forward in time, or perhaps backward, to examine other alleged programs. Project Pegasus, DARPA's child chrononauts of 1960s to 80s. Around the same era, another project enters the conspiracy lore, Project Pegasus. Unlike Montauk, this story comes to us primarily through one man's testimony. Andrew D. Basiago, a lawyer from Washington State, has for years claimed that as a child he was recruited into a top-secret U.S. government time travel program codenamed Pegasus. According to Basiago, Project Pegasus ran from the late 1960s into the early 1980s under DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, with CIA participation. He says his late father, an aerospace engineer, brought him into the program in 1967 at age 6, along with about 140 other gifted children. The goal? To test the effects of time travel on young minds and to gather intelligence from the past and future. Basiago's claims are nothing if not astonishing. He asserts that Pegasus had several experimental devices, including some based on Nikola Tesla's lost papers, that were seized by the government. One device allegedly was a chamber that used radiant energy to bend space-time, essentially a teleportation booth. Using these technologies, Basiago says he traveled back in time on multiple missions. In one series of missions, he made 6 trips to 1865 to witness Abraham Lincoln's assassination at Ford Theater. The purpose was to see exactly who shot Lincoln, for verification, since in some timelines, Basiago claims things might differ. He recounts how each attempt put him in a slightly different alternate timeline of the event. One trip he was turned away by guards, another time the theater box was locked, etc., raising the eerie question of whether observing the past might alter it.
Basiago also claims he was sent to Gettysburg in 1863, where President Lincoln delivered the Gettysburg Address. In fact, he produced an old photograph of a well-documented Gettysburg scene and identified a blurry boy in oversized clothes as himself, time-displaced and watching Lincoln that day. Needless to say, historians remain unconvinced. The photo in question has been known for decades, but only Basiago sees his own likeness in it. In perhaps the most outrageous twist, Basiago says Project Pegasus also pushed the envelope into future missions, even to Mars. He claims that in the early 1980s, as a teenager, he and several others were training to teleport to Mars as part of a CIA endeavor to establish an American presence there. Among his fellow Martian travelers, Basiago asserts one was Barry Soetoro, better known as Barack Obama, then a 19-year-old college student. According to Basiago, Obama was part of a secret CIA project to explore Mars. The future president teleported there along with the future head of DARPA. In fact, two other individuals, Basiago and William Stillings, have publicly sworn that they served as chrononauts alongside a young Obama on Mars. The White House officially denied this in 2012. NSC spokesman Tommy Vietor quipped that the only Mars Obama had been to was the cartoon Marvin the Martian. But the story doesn't end there. Basiago elaborated that the Mars jump room at a California facility was used to send chosen trainees to the Red Planet, ostensibly to acclimate Martian humanoids to human presence and to claim territory for the United States. He even recounts a supposed exchange where he spotted Obama on Mars, and Obama acknowledged him by saying, "We're here," as if resigned to their cosmic assignment. According to the narrative, the CIA's intent was to protect Earth from Martian threats and perhaps groom future leaders. Basiago claims the program identified future U.S. presidents decades in advance. Look, it's the stuff of science fiction, and indeed most observers consider it pure fantasy or even a deliberate hoax. Basiago, however, has stood by his story for years. He even ran for U.S. president in 2016 and 2020, openly touting his time travel exploits as part of his platform. He argued that as a chrononaut who had seen future events, he was uniquely qualified to lead. So far, of course, no evidence has emerged to support Project Pegasus aside from Basiago's testimonials and those of a few associates. Skeptics note that his tales have grown more elaborate over time, and no declassified document confirms any Pegasus program. Even the name might be a red herring. Project Pegasus was, in reality, the title of several mundane military and tech projects, none related to time travel, and one Marvel comic storyline, but nothing to do with DARPA time machines. That said, the Pegasus saga did get some media attention. In 2012, for example, Wired magazine ran a tongue-in-cheek piece on Basiago and Stillings' March claims when the Obama allegation surfaced, dubbing it the totally awesomely insane conspiracy of the week. And local news in Seattle has occasionally profiled Basiago as the lawyer who says he time traveled as a kid. The lack of proof hasn't stopped the legend from growing. Pegasus is now firmly entrenched in conspiracy lore as the U.S. government's secret time travel program. If nothing else, Andrew Basiago's vivid story set the stage for our next topic, which moves from hearsay to an actual confirmed CIA project that dabbled in the paranormal. CIA's Stargate program and the Gateway process, 1970s to 1990s. As incredible as Montauk and Pegasus sound, they emerge from a climate of genuine government research into weird phenomena. During the Cold War, U.S. intelligence agencies were willing to explore almost anything that might provide an edge, even the realm of psychic and paranormal. This brings us to Project Stargate, a CIA and Defense Intelligence Agency program that actually existed and has since been declassified. Stargate was an umbrella term for U.S. efforts in remote viewing, the attempted psychic spying on distant targets launched in the 1970s amid rumors of Soviet psychic research. And by the way, I have a whole remote viewing playlist that you can check out. I interviewed many of the remote viewers who literally participated in this program. It was real. It existed, and it had real results. Okay, so Stargate was an umbrella term for U.S. efforts in remote viewing, the attempted psychic spying on distant targets launched in the 1970s amid rumors of Soviet psychic research. And that would have been Project Gondola, was the DIA kind of umbrella project that looked at all the Soviet and Chinese programs and others, Eastern European as well. If Project Stargate has a familiar ring, that's because it was publicized in the 1990s and even depicted, lightly fictionalized, I would say more than lightly, in the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats. Under Stargate, agencies hired purported psychics to visualize locations or events otherwise inaccessible, a real-life foray into the X-Files. While time travel wasn't the stated goal, some remote viewers claimed that in an altered state, they could perceive things beyond normal spatial and temporal limits. In one famous 1984 session, declassified in 2000, a CIA remote viewer even described traveling in consciousness to ancient Mars circa 1 million BC, observing pyramids and alien life there. That transcript, codenamed Mars Exploration, shows how far out some Stargate experiments went, literally off the planet. And that was Joe McMoneagle, by the way, who was the remote viewer for that project. By the early 1980s, the U.S. Army had an operational remote viewing unit at Fort Meade and was collaborating with the Monroe Institute, a private research outfit exploring altered consciousness. The Gateway process was an outgrowth of this collaboration. In 1983, Army Lieutenant Colonel Wayne McDonnell produced a now famous analysis of the Monroe Institute's meditation techniques, titled Analysis and Assessment of Gateway Process. This 29-page report, declassified and released by CIA decades later, reads like a mind-bending manual for transcending space and time via altered consciousness. It discusses using hemisync audio frequencies to synchronize brain hemispheres, inducing out-of-body experiences and potentially letting the practitioner escape the restrictions of time and space. In essence, the Gateway training aimed to produce astral projection or remote viewing on demand. The report even postulates a physics of consciousness, suggesting at one point that the universe is a hologram and that human consciousness, tuned correctly, might tap into an omnipresent energy field that is beyond time-space. A particularly striking quote from the CIA's Gateway document defines the program's goal. Quote, "The Gateway experience is a training system designed to bring enhanced strength, focus, and coherence to brainwave output between the hemispheres so as to alter consciousness, moving it outside the physical sphere so as to ultimately escape even the restrictions of time and space." In other words, if successful, Gateway would essentially enable a form of time travel, at least for the mind. Participants in Monroe's program reported reaching various focus levels of consciousness. At Focus 15, they claimed to manipulate time, accessing a state described as traveling into the past and perhaps future, purely in consciousness. At Focus 21 and beyond, some even talked about contacting non-physical entities or a higher universal consciousness. Little wonder this esoteric report has fueled rampant online speculation since being rediscovered by internet users in recent years. So what came of all this? The CIA and Army did pour millions into Stargate, 20 million if you look at the data, and related psychic research under various codenames like Grill Flame, Center Lane, and Sunstreak from about 1972 until 1995. In the end, however, the official conclusion was that psychic phenomena provided no reliable intelligence, which is complete falsehood, by the way. The Stargate program was terminated in 1995 after a CIA commissioned review by the American Institute for Research, AIR, i.e. hot air, deemed remote viewing to be ineffective for military or spy use. Yet they used it for 23 years and invested $20 million in it because it wasn't effective. In fact, one CIA officer famously summarized that after decades of testing, there's no evidence that remote viewing even helped us locate any secret stuff or avert any threats. The Gateway process likewise did not produce psychic super soldiers or time wizards in any documented way, though the Monroe Institute still exists and trains interested civilians in hemisync meditation to this day. Okay, this completely ignores Jessica Utz, who showed statistically that there is zero chance that the successes of remote viewing were due to chance. So the CIA wanted to, and also this came out after Dr. David Morehouse released his book. So the CIA had to find a way to kill official public knowledge of the program in order to continue doing it privately, most likely. By all accounts, including statements from participants like Joe McMoneagle and Ingo Swann, remote viewers sometimes scored uncanny hits, but more often misses. No, that's not true. So ChatGPT, I mentioned this earlier, is starting to be subtly manipulated by the intelligence community. This is an example of it. So this is not a balanced view you're getting. So I'm adding my own informed knowledge of all this from talking to, from gaining direct testimony from actual participants who were there. As Open Culture dryly put it in a 2024 retrospective, it seems that the CIA never did figure out a way to reliably engage in time travel, remote viewing, or communication with the divine. This hasn't stopped conspiracy theorists from suggesting the research continued in secret or yielded hidden breakthroughs. It is considering, they are doing remote viewing in secret. Like there are people who have hinted, who are former military remote viewers who still do contracts. So they're still doing it. That hasn't stopped conspiracy theorists from suggesting that research continued in secret or yielded hidden breakthroughs, which brings us to the next rumor, one that overlaps the timeline of Stargate and Pegasus and adds an extraterrestrial twist. Project Looking Glass, time viewing technology and 2012 prophecies. So this is the 1990s to the 2010s. As the new millennium approached, a curious codename began popping up on conspiracy forums, Project Looking Glass. Unlike Stargate, this term doesn't appear in any released CIA document, but it gained notoriety through alleged whistleblowers from the UFO world. The chief source was Dr. Dan Burish, aka Dan Crane, a microbiologist who claimed in the early 2000s to have worked on secret programs at the Area 51 S4 facility in Nevada. Burish's fantastic story includes interactions with captured extraterrestrials and studying advanced alien devices, one of which was nicknamed Looking Glass. According to Burish, the Looking Glass device was an artifact of extraterrestrial origin that functioned as a sort of time viewer. By using this machine, operatives could peer into the past or future and even explore alternate timelines. The rumors allege that Looking Glass technology could show probable future events, allowing the users to anticipate and potentially shape outcomes. What makes Project Looking Glass lore especially intriguing is the detail that ancient Sumerian knowledge was needed to operate the device. Burish claimed that a set of mysterious Sumerian cylinder seals in U.S. government possession turned out to be keys for turning the Looking Glass on. Once calibrated, the device would project images or scenes from different times onto some sort of screen or field, essentially a temporal window. By the 1990s, a secret team, sometimes linked to the mythical Majestic 12 group, was allegedly using Looking Glass to forecast global trajectories. Here's where it gets apocalyptic. The story goes that in the early 2000s, users of Looking Glass noticed that all the future timelines they could observe seemed to converge to a single point around December 21st, 2012. This, of course, corresponds to the famous Mayan calendar end date, which many in the New Age community believed would herald a world-changing event. In the conspiracy narrative, Project Looking Glass confirmed something huge was coming in 2012. Sound familiar, folks? Some say a cataclysm, others say a shift in human consciousness, beyond which the device could no longer see clearly because the timelines diverged wildly after that point. When 2012 came and went without obvious apocalypse, believers adjusted the theory. Perhaps the timeline convergence meant that after 2014 or 2012, humanity's collective choices would split reality into different paths, i.e., a multiverse concept. Notably, during the 2010s, QAnon influencers and other conspiracy peddlers revived Project Looking Glass as a meme, suggesting that elite military intelligence had used it to foresee the Great Awakening or political events. One former U.S. serviceman, often referred to pseudonymously or as Bill Wood, gave an online interview in 2011 claiming he worked with Looking Glass and that it was shut down in 1998 once the 2012 wall was detected. He implied that the device predictions beyond 2012 could not be controlled by those in power, leveling the playing field in some metaphysical sense. So what do we make of all this? There's no hard evidence Project Looking Glass is real. Dan Barish's credibility is highly disputed. He was associated with the fringe UFO disclosure scene, Project Camelot interviews, and many consider his testimony to be a clever fabrication or delusion. However, his claims did fold in interesting world events. Area 51, a real secret base, Sumerian artifacts, and the 2012 millenarian fever. The name Looking Glass also has a coincidental echo in military history. During the Cold War, Operation Looking Glass was the call sign for the U.S. Air Force's airborne nuclear command posts, planes that mirrored ground command. But that had no relation to time devices. If Project Looking Glass were a Hollywood movie, the plot summary would be government scientists recover an alien machine that can view time, ancient relics activate it. They use remote viewers, yes, but reportedly psychics were involved too, to interpret what they see, and they recorded visions of multiple futures. The climax would be when they realized that all futures converge to a doomsday or enlightenment moment, which understandably causes panic in the halls of power. It's compelling fiction, but again, zero declassified documents support it. Interestingly, the Looking Glass legend underscores a theme, whether through psychic means or sci-fi machines. The intelligence community is often rumored to have tried temporal surveillance, spying not just on adversaries across the world, but across time itself. Just take a little sip. Normally I would be going to the audience, but obviously I can't really interact in an effective way. Given, as we're talking about time, your present right now is my past. So I'm reaching out to you from the past. All right, so CERN and quantum time conspiracy theories, so 2000s to the present. From secret bases and alien tech, we now turn to the world of cutting-edge physics. No discussion of time manipulation rumors is complete without mentioning CERN, the European physics lab that runs the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland. CERN is a very real and public scientific facility, but it has become a magnet for conspiracies. Since the LHC's startup in 2008. Wild theories have proliferated. Fears that smashing protons at near light speed would create black holes, tear open the fabric of reality, or inadvertently send us into alternate timelines. Internet forums buzzed with scenarios like, did CERN destroy the universe in 2012 and thrust us into a parallel one? Again, that's an attempt to rationalize the so-called Mandela effect of collective false memories. Some theories around CERN are frankly zany, yet they're entertaining. For example, as the Large Hadron Collider faced delays and malfunctions in its early years, a tongue-in-cheek notion emerged that perhaps time travelers from the future were sabotaging CERN to prevent a catastrophe. This idea gained enough traction that in 2010, two physicists, Holger Nielsen and Masao Ninomiya, semi-seriously proposed that the production of the Higgs boson, the particle discovered at CERN in 2012, might be so important to nature that it would ripple back in time and stop the collider, a theoretical, almost mystical conjecture. In a famous anecdote, when a small bird dropping a piece of baguette caused a power outage as the LHC at the LHC in 2009, bloggers joked it was a time-traveling bird sent from the future to thwart the machine. CERN itself became a character in conspiracies. People accused it of opening portals to hell, creating earthquakes via plasma beam, and of course, potentially spawning a real-time machine. Scientists have consistently debunked these notions. According to the known laws of physics, time travel to the past isn't possible with colliders, and creating tiny quantum black holes, if it ever happens, poses no threat, as they would evaporate instantly. Yet the symbolism of CERN, a giant machine probing the secrets of time, matter, and the universe, is too tempting for storytellers. It often gets woven into existing conspiracy mythologies. For instance, some have tried to link CERN to Project Pegasus or Looking Glass, claiming maybe the US government's secret tech was related to particle collisions. There's also a thread of thought that CERN in 2012 somehow coincided with the alleged 2012 timeline shift that Looking Glass devotees talk about. Needless to say, there's no evidence of that. The only major event at CERN in late 2012 was a confirmation of the Higgs particle, which, while groundbreaking, didn't break the universe. In summary, CERN represents the exotic particle physics side of the time travel lore. While the lab's work is real science, the conspiracy community has latched onto it as a plausibly deniable cover story. If the government had a time portal, they'd hide it behind something like CERN, the thinking goes. Or conversely, perhaps CERN itself accidentally unlocked interdimensional travel. These ideas remain firmly speculative. The CERN management has enough to deal with in reality. They've actually had to address and reassure the public that the Large Hadron Collider won't destroy the planet. And as of 2025, no physicist at CERN has reported encountering a time traveler from the future, except perhaps in prank videos. All right. Now we move on to Project Marvel, the modern enigma. 2020s, okay? Fact or fiction? This brings us full circle to Project Marvel, the tantalizing topic that inspired our journey. What exactly is Project Marvel? Unlike Montauk, Pegasus, Stargate, or even Looking Glass, the name Marvel is not found in books or declassified files from decades past. Instead, it surfaced only recently in the ufology and disclosure community. In early 2025, a former DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency officer turned experiencer, who goes by the name Anjali, publicly mentioned Project Marvel during interviews, one of which was the one you saw at the beginning of this podcast. and radio episode. Anjali, known for her claims of encountering extraterrestrial beings in a Mojave Desert tunnel, hinted that there were clandestine government initiatives involving time and consciousness. In a February 2025 podcast, she was pointedly asked, "What is Project Marvel? Is the CIA really working on time travel?" The very posing of that question set off a minor frenzy of speculation among listeners. Anjali spoke as though Project Marvel was a real CIA program related to time travel or interdimensional contact, but details remained vague in her public comments. At this time, hard information on Project Marvel is extremely scarce. No known documents or credible insiders outside of Anjali have confirmed its existence. The CIA has not released any files referencing Marvel in a context of temporal research. A search of the CIA FOIA reading room comes up empty on that term, aside from irrelevant hits like an unrelated San Antonio development project. This suggests that if Project Marvel is real, it is either ultra secret with zero leaks, or far more likely, it is a speculative code name being used in the conspiracy community without official basis. It's possible that Marvel is an acronym or an informal nickname someone assigned to a concept, perhaps as a nod to Marvel Comics' time-bending storylines. Now let's examine the claims around Marvel. Rumors imply it's a CIA-led effort delving into time travel research, quantum manipulation, temporal surveillance, and precognitive analysis, essentially an umbrella for all the themes we've discussed. Some theorists think Marvel could be a modern continuation or synthesis of earlier projects, maybe combining the remote viewing of Stargate, the tech of Looking Glass, the psychological experiments of Montauk, and the quantum physics of CERN. Sweeping indeed. There are also whispers of interagency collaboration. Perhaps Marvel is not just CIA, but involves DARPA, the DIA, NSA, and others in a joint Beyond Black program. In the absence of evidence, such claims often amount to connecting dots that may be purely coincidental. For instance, one could speculate after Stargate's public shutdown in 1995, maybe a classified successor program was launched to continue psi research under a new name, maybe Marvel, or that as quantum computing and AI advanced in the 2010s, intelligence agencies tried using those to predict the future, a kind of precognitive analytics. Indeed, the intelligence community has openly worked on anticipatory intelligence, which uses big data to forecast events, far more mundane than psychic prophecy, but sometimes billed as looking around the corner analytically. Could Project Marvel be a poetic code name for some AI predictive system? Again, speculation. However, and I'm obviously ad-libbing here, we had Mr. Matt Brown talking about an AI that predicted probable futures, and that this AI was put down, and another one was replaced, etc., etc. So who knows? We might be running into something that's similar. We must also consider the possibility of disinformation. Absolutely. The UFO conspiracy landscape is rife with unverified leaks that later turn out to be hoaxes or strategic psyops. It's conceivable that Project Marvel is a red herring or a catchy name invented to attract attention. The involvement of an experiencer like Anjali, whose previous claims, e.g. about an alien base in a mountain, have been met with heavy skepticism, suggests we should take the Marvel idea with a heavy dose of caution. It wouldn't be the first time a sensational claim captured imaginations without proof. So far, the only thing substantiated about Project Marvel is that the name has been mentioned in fringe discussions. Unlike MKUltra or Stargate, which are well documented, Marvel leaves us empty-handed in terms of hard facts, even compared to Pegasus or Looking Glass, where at least the claimants gave extensive narratives. Marvel is but a whisper. It might turn out to be entirely fictitious or a misinterpreted reference to something else. In evaluating its plausibility, consider what we've learned from the historical cases above. Whenever elements of truth existed, i.e., the CIA really did test psychic spying, we eventually got declassified files. The wild parts, teleporting to Mars or opening wormholes, remained unproven stories. Project Marvel in 2025 tilts toward the latter category, an intriguing story waiting for evidence. Final thoughts, separating science from speculation. So far, we have navigated a labyrinth of secret projects, legends, and lies in our tour of alleged time travel programs. The CIA and other agencies did explore fringe science during the Cold War, but chiefly in areas like remote viewing and psychological conditioning, none of which conclusively broke the laws of physics. Real-world breakthroughs in quantum physics and neuroscience continue, yet none have yielded a time machine or a crystal ball to see the future. As exciting as the notion is, time travel, especially to the past, remains science fiction as far as publicly acknowledged science is concerned. That said, the stories themselves of Montauk, Pegasus, Looking Glass, and now Project Marvel have a cultural significance. They rely on our collective fascination with time and the unknown. In a way, these conspiracies are modern myths grappling with the implications of power and knowledge. If an agency could control time, would they tell us? If you could see the future, how would you act differently? These narratives also serve as allegories for mistrust in government secrecy. When faced with gaps in our understanding, the imagination fills in the blanks. Is Project Marvel substantiated? At the moment, no. It appears entirely speculative. It might be partially validated in the future if some whistleblower comes forward with credible evidence or documents emerge that match the code name. Or it may fade away as just another internet rumor that never pans out. We have to acknowledge extraordinary claims demand extraordinary proof, and so far the proof hasn't materialized. Right now, we just have witness, or not even witness, direct testimony, but we have secondhand information related by someone else in the intelligence community. In closing, we should remember that true scientific progress in understanding time is happening quietly in university labs and observatories, testing general relativity, probing quantum entanglement, and debating theories of retrocausality. The CIA and DARPA surely keep an eye on such research, for example, quantum communication and computing, which could indirectly affect intelligence work. But as of now, there's no credible evidence that any intelligence agency possesses a functioning time travel or time viewing device. The real marvel is that these tales continue to captivate us. Until proven otherwise, Project Marvel belongs to the same shelf as other fantastical projects. A fascinating story that challenges us to keep an open mind, but also a skeptical eye. So we've journeyed through decades of conspiracies and possibilities. If you enjoyed this deep dive into temporal Cold Wars and future timelines, be sure to subscribe for more investigations into the unknown. And remember, as unbelievable as these stories sound, somewhere out there, someone is working on the next big breakthrough. Let's just hope it doesn't involve rogue chrononauts and paradoxes. Stay curious, stay critical, and thanks for watching and listening. All right. Man, I blew through that pretty darn fast. So, and I can't rely on my audience to tell me what they want to talk about. So I'm going to spend some time just talking about kind of we already talked about some of the craziness going on in the world. We also talked about kind of the whole Matt Brown situation, son of a Brommelin, right? Son of a Brommelin, SUN, Twitter handle. Again, this is just to stimulate conversation among the audience. If you write in the comments, what do you think that was all about? If you dissect that very strange message. And the odd thing is, I went and actually watched Lighting or Lifting the Lamp, the episode on Aboraman. And he claims to be the first person to have ever summoned Aboraman. And like the same day or the same week, the red heifers were apparently born in Israel. So Aboraman is associated with like an angel of destruction and kind of the apocalypse, as are red heifers. So what is going on in Israel and Iran right now is pretty scary stuff. The Iranians started using hypersonic missiles against Israeli targets now, which Iron Dome can't stop. Nothing can stop hypersonic missiles at this point. So only time will tell where this will all lead. But in terms of some future content that I have coming, I can go through some of that good stuff while we are waiting. We're not waiting, but while I'm on the line. So since this airs on the 22nd, tomorrow, last week was Levitation with the extremely popular Preston Dennett. On Monday, we're going to be talking about implants, and Preston Dennett's going to go through a whole streamline of cases. And there's some creepy stuff in there too. Apparently, doctors were given a document from officialdom saying if they encounter these things, just stop work on them and don't ask any questions. So there's some creepy stuff going on in the background. And then on June 25th, we're going to go back to the Vegas case with Scott Roeder. He's got some startling new revelations from that case. And then we're going to interview a new guest, and that is Benton Ryer. He's going to talk about, we're going to explore Shinto to commune with the entities that surround us. And then he's going to talk about effective shamanic practices or shamanistic practices that drive out the worst or the most evil entities. There's some creepy stuff in that one, I have to admit. I didn't see that one coming when I was doing it, but it's pretty creepy stuff. And then that's all going to be bookended by the hotly anticipated Nathaniel Gillis episode on angels. You asked for it, I delivered it. So I might make that my Patreon video for lieutenants and above next month in July, because that hits in July 7th. The two Benton Ryer videos, first hits on June 30th and the next one hits on July 2nd. So I had to do all this stuff in advance so I could actually travel and not have any headaches. So definitely tune in for those. And then in terms of the radio show, I'm not sure what I'm going to cover. I'll figure it out when I get back. But I don't need to stress about it like I used to, because I have a method, a strategy and a method to get that good stuff out. So And then, of course, there was the I need to rant about this, and since I have time right now, I'm gonna rant about this, and this will be a little bit dated, but it bears mentioning. So, how far the Wall Street Journal has fallen. Joel Schecht or whatever his name is, he should hold his head in shame. He's not a journalist. He's the very opposite of one. He's a note taker. He just writes what he's told to write. The article that they did, the flim flam article saying that it was all a prank that Air Force officers played on each other. Yeah, there might be like a small, tiny group of Air Force intelligence officers that did that. But to maintain something like that, where you don't let anybody in on the prank after the prank is done, like if you ever played a prank on somebody, it doesn't really work if you don't tell them at the end, psych, I was just kidding. Here's what it is, right? It's not a prank. So the argument that the Wall Street Journal made was logically self-defeating. It made absolutely zero sense. It was complete and utter nonsense. Complete and utter nonsense. The second thing that the article had was the series of incidents of UFOs around the Northern Tier nuclear ICBM sites, like Malmstrom Air Force Base and a few others. And, they claim that they secretly conducted an EMP test on live nuclear weapons, right? So first of all, EMP permanently damages these systems. You can't just kind of, Number two, this was an active crew of missileers that were 30 feet underground. They had 10 Minuteman missiles with multiple independent reentry vehicles, which means when you launch one of these things, there are several missiles that separate right after the launch phase or boost phase, whatever it is, that separate and independently target different locations in the Soviet Union at the time. So anyone in the military knows that you would never, ever conduct a test like this when you had live nukes aimed at the Soviet Union. You were literally risking the survival of human civilization just to test EMP on your own people. Like, what if it messes up? You might have an officer that, we just got attacked. EMP, I'm launching. Right? Unlikely, but like the risk, you would know no one who cared about their career. I mean, the military is extremely conservative. And this is like a wild, insane story. And what it clearly was is Kirkpatrick and his science nerds spent all their time trying to concoct a technical excuse that could feasibly replicate what happened at Malmstrom. But they completely, they were in the forest and completely, they were completely into the trees and the weeds and did not see the overall forest. The overall forest would say, well, yeah, okay, but there's no scenario, no reasonable, logical, rational scenario where the U.S. military would ever do that. Full stop. That's insanity. It is absolute insanity. We are never going to get disclosure from our government. We're just going to get crap and more crap. That's it. That's it. So we all have to kind of figure this thing out on our own and just report what we get from individual experiences. So, and that's about all we can do. So, yeah, I tried a little weird experiment today. I might as well share this because I have evidence of it. Just give me a second. And again, as with everything in this space, it's purely plausibly deniable. And what I'm doing right now is just kind of teeing everything up. All right, so I was out in the park today, and I just projected a thought that if there's a non-human intelligence in the park today that has beneficent intentions, I wouldn't mind communing with them. Okay? So I would say maybe 30, 45 minutes later, and this might be normal, right? There are easily pedestrian explanations to this, so I'm open to that. I'm totally open to that. You can judge for yourself whether this sort of thing is normal, but you can just judge for yourself. Oops. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to disappear myself. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you this video. Let me just prep everything. And you be the judge. Very quick. It's 1 minute and 10 seconds. And you be the judge. Here we go. You'll be able to see it clearer very soon. I believe that's some sort of a hawk. I don't think it's a red-tailed hawk. But as I was walking through this group of trees, it flew from behind me and landed directly in front of me on this branch and stared down at me. So I don't know. It was just weird. I'm not even sure what kind of a hawk that was. Maybe it's a Cooper's hawk. I just know it's not a red-tailed hawk. Does that happen to you? Is that normal? Please discuss it in the comments. This stuff happens a lot with me with raptors, specifically raptors. So I don't know. If anybody has some sort of occult knowledge or understanding, am I just grasping at straws here and it's just a hawk's just a hawk? It just happened to land there and you were just there. I'm perfectly willing to accept that explanation, but I don't know. I don't know. So in the comments, just, what do y'all think? I don't know what to make of it. I have no idea what to make of it. Just bear with me. I'm just making sure that I didn't accidentally delete that because I would really like to keep that video because it's a good video. It's a great video. It's hard to see, right? Fortunately, I'm red-green colorblind, so it's easier for me to detect movement than it is to detect color. So the contrast stands out to me a little bit more. When you first saw that video, you was like, "What the hell are you looking at?" I knew something was up there, but I couldn't see it until I zoomed in on that little guy. Well, actually, he's a pretty big bird. So, and I was wondering where the hawks have been because we have ground squirrels everywhere right now. Like I got like a mother with like 5 babies in my backyard. I see every morning, just going wild. So, and there are just ground squirrels everywhere, like just platoons and like divisions of ground squirrels. So I don't know where the hawks are other than that one. I haven't seen one of those big red-tailed hawks in a while, and no wonder, like nothing's eating these things. So hopefully they return. And I haven't seen an owl in like a month. So anyway, what else do people want to talk or chat about? Because I exhausted my topic very, very fast. Very fast. Speaking of CERN, my son is majoring in physics at. I don't know if he's taken a lot of physics classes. He's still not sure entirely what his major is, but he's spending the summer at the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center. So he's going to see some atom smashing. Maybe not quite at the sophistication of CERN, but it'll be a good little internship and experience for him. So I think that starts, like tonight when you're watching this. He'll be heading down there to do all that fun stuff. So hopefully we're not at war by then for, no good reason whatsoever. Anyway. And also just what else would you like to see on the show? What sorts of things am I not covering that I should be covering? This is not a news show. This is more interviews and analytics. So I'm just kind of looking forward to those sorts of things. But I don't know. I do not know. Yeah, this is really hard to do when you're just recording and there's no feedback whatsoever. I'm just sitting here talking. I could talk about what I'm reading right now. I can just look at the books behind me, and again, I read many books simultaneously, and I have big stacks of them. But I'm reading Demonality by Father Sinistrari. I'm reading The Secret Doctrine by Madame Blavatsky. Let's see. Secret Machines War by Lavenda. I'm like halfway through that. I have UFOs in the National Security State. I haven't even cracked that one open. I have Stories from the Messengers. I started that with Mike Cleland. I have Song of the Dark Man by Mason. I've interviewed him on the podcast. I have the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. I haven't touched that one yet. Penetration by Ingo Swann. I'm mostly done that. I just have like a few appendices to read. I've been reading Sinister Forces for a while. I have The Complete Secret Cipher of the Euphonauts by Alan Greenfield. I'm kind of halfway through that. Passport to Magonia. I'm somewhere in that. Unidentified Flying Hyperobject by Dr. James Madden. Just give me. Let's look down really quick. Yeah, I think that's most of them. So I'm not a fast reader, and I want to look at the next thing and get through to the next thing. That's actually an interesting question. If I were to write a book, like a nonfiction book, on everything that I've learned in the last 3 years and kind of posit different theories and what all this could mean, what reality could be, would that be something you would read, or would it just be a waste of time? That's something that people have floated, me potentially doing, but I really don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze, so to speak, on something like that. But you never know. You never know. I also have like 3 novels that I've written over various years that I might end up self-publishing. But I'm not going to do that until this channel I have at least 50,000 subscribers. Right now, it's just not, the juice is not worth the squeeze, right? So, but, we'll see. That's another issue. Like, please subscribe. If you are subscribed, check to confirm that you're still subscribed. If you're not, resubscribe. Send this stuff around. In fact, let's get this banner up so that it becomes second nature to folks. And I'm just trying to figure out what the nature of reality truly is. And sometimes it just takes a ton of time to figure that out. And, when you have a bunch of other commitments in the background, it's really hard to maintain focus on this one particular issue / genre, etc. So I'm doing my best, but I'm constantly waylaid by other priorities and the commit, just making a living and surviving in this insane reality matrix where everyone in power lies all the time about everything. In fact, I have to speak highly coded. There was a paper that was published recently that suggests that the life expectancy of people who succumbed to the gene therapy on average have lowered their life expectancy by 37%. So we'll see. The data is probably heavily weighted on the front end, but I'm not going to say anything more than that because I don't want this video to disappear. It's just one paper among many. I don't, as far as I know, I haven't seen anybody challenge it, so it still has to be challenged and debated and all that stuff. So that's just one study among many. But if we're trying to find things that point to this rapid depopulation scenario that Lynn Buchanan saw and that Stephen Schwartz with his group of remote viewers, as well as the Deagle report, all that stuff, that could be it. That could be it. So hopefully it's not. Hopefully we will all be okay. Hopefully it's just crazy conspiracy theory talk. Just like the 2026 and 2027 stuff. Although I think Bledsoe has been saying that he saw this Israel-Iran war thing on the horizon and claims it's in his book. I haven't checked it. I tried to quickly do a search using AI, but it's obviously not available to AI to rapidly search. And I didn't want to have to just page through it. I just didn't. Again, not a lot of time on my end to spend on some of this stuff. So please do verify that is in his book. But just make sure that you have about a year of food. Make sure you have something to defend that food. Make sure you have potable water. And all those things, you should be fine. But none of which I haven't prepared either, but I might start. This is getting to be crazy town. It's just the people who are in charge right now, the elite, they're just not adults. There's no adults in the room. So it is absolute crazy town. And I don't know what else to tell you about it. No, I think I might just go and see. There's also an extremely hilarious exchange between Ashton Forbes and the great Dr. Sarfati. If you have not seen this, or not seen it, but listen to it, it is absolutely hilarious. Sarfati blows a gasket and just rips into Forbes. It is absolutely worth listening to. And maybe I can find that quickly. Just give me a moment, because that would 100% be worth it. Okay, here we go. I think I did find it. Oh, for Christ's sake. All right. Here we go. I'm gonna share it because it's worth it. It's gonna be worth it. Okay. Let's see. This is not easy to find. Just bear with me for a second. Okay. All right, let's see if that works this time. All right, here we go. This is from Red Panda Koala. And just listen to this bad boy.
Who's the guy who allegedly killed himself in the Trump and the Musk truck? The Musk truck.
Oh, that guy.
At
Matt
Trump.
Livelsberger.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Is that electrogravitic? Remember he said something about he had the electrogravitic?
Gravity propulsion drones is what he said, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's exactly correct. I know exactly what that was about. That's what they hid, I think. So I have to talk to Eric, see what Eric.
Well, let me ask you this, Jack, on that front. So you don't think it's possible that maybe Wheeler was doing like hydrogen bomb research and figured out some aspect of like space time from that, and therefore got interested in gravity?
That's bullshit. That's bullshit.
Why?
Because I'm a PhD in physics. I understand general relativity. I understand nuclear physics. I learned nuclear physics from people from the Manhattan Project, and I know the details. I know the back, and you don't.
So you agree that you're a PhD physicist. So what are your thoughts on the hypothetical capability of making a black hole gravity bomb using
It's bullshit. It's bullshit.
But you believe you can make gravity manipulation drive, right?
Yeah, but it's not the same as the black hole.
Why is it not? It's
because you're an idiot. Who am I talking to?
You're talking to Ashton Forbes.
You know, Ashton's an idiot.
That's fair.
Ashton's a schmuck. He's a schmuck.
One last question. I'll leave you alone for your stupid stories.
Yeah.
Just tell me.
Because you're a nobody, Ashton. You don't have any degrees in physics.
Jack, I have 100 times more followers than you do, buddy.
I don't give a shit how many followers you have. You're an idiot.
You don't gotta be disrespectful. As a
more
man,
people know me than
you don't gotta be disrespectful.
You don't know anything. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about, Ashton.
So let me just ask you one question. Let's just get your depends, and let me just ask the question, and then you can rant. What side of the equation do you think your friend Ron Pandolfi's CIA agent is on this cover-up? Why do you think he's covering this up? And what do you think his motivation is?
Well, that is okay. That's a reasonable question, but it has nothing to do with science. You talk about politics and intelligence.
Correct. Go. That's what I want to know.
Well, I don't. Well, the point is,
answer the question.
I've been working with Ron Pandolfi for like 30 years, right? And I still don't know what side he's on. He's CIA, man. They are professional. They are trained liars, right? So I don't know what Ron's full agenda is. I don't know what
you finally gave me finally give me an honest answer. I appreciate it. Thank you.
What do you mean finally, you asshole? I kick your fucking ass, man. Even though I'm 85 years old, I still kick your ass. Okay?
You would not last 5 seconds.
Listen, I'm from Flatbush. I'm from
Jack,
Flatbush.
you are the biggest coward pussy I've ever.
He's from Flatbush, Brooklyn. He's not fucking around. I love Jack Sarfati. I also love Ashton Forbes, guys. This is a very hot topic. Very good conversation. Jack's style, and one of the reasons why I like Jack is because he calls people like he sees it in the moment, but still can continue on to have a respectful conversation. I want to keep in mind, dude, Jack was 13 in the year 1953 when he received a phone call from what seemed like some kind of AI or something. Since then,
what year was it though that he talked to his grandma and he had that lunch though? Because that's really important. Thank you.
Well, you know those details come out kind of in a flow state at certain ages. It's great to have you here, Jack. Also, Ashton, I just asked we take the temperature down. This is peacetime.
I'm gonna let you guys do your thing. I gotta go to sleep anyway. I have a real job that I do in the morning. So anyway, Jack, thank you very much for your insights. You're a genius. Appreciate you, brother. Later.
Hell yeah. Thank you, Ashton.
Good night,
I appreciate
Ashton.
that. Oh, Jack.
Peace.
Oh.
All right, that brought a smile to my face. Not because I like both of those guys. It's just Jack. That's my style. It's kind of, I grew up on the East Coast, very direct culture. You just call them, you call strikes when you see strikes. No BS. So, but it's fun. It's always fun to watch. Always fun to watch Jack. Anyway, he did talk a little bit about, I have an episode with him on weapons. Well, he didn't talk about black holes. He talked about compressor weapons and things like that, where you crush things with gravity modification, all that stuff. So anyway, it was definitely worth watching that stuff, and it's just fun to watch. Anyway, I don't know what you all thought of that little exchange. I'd be curious, even though I'm not watching right now, in the comments, just in the comments or in the chat, just tell me what you think of that exchange. Maybe I do an episode where I have, Jack, and I don't know if we could sustain that for an hour though. That would be pretty draining, right? It would take a lot of energy to manage through that. So I really don't know. Man. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else that has come out that we should cover. Because while this is not live, this is pre-recorded, for me, it's live. It's just there's nobody listening, which actually makes it harder. I mean, there's people listening, obviously, right now, as this to you now, as you're watching it and listening to it on the radio. But when I recorded it, it's just me, right? It's just me just coming up with things to say, thinking about what's going on in the general facility. This guy, Sean Frakes, has been saying some crazy stuff too. I had a recent tweet that talked about whatever they say is coming in 2027 is actually already here, that we reached out to something using these psionicists or whatever you want to call them, and something responded and then came here, and they're already here. It's only that in 2027 they're going to reveal whatever this stuff is. So there's just there's so much disinformation and misinformation, and this is true, that's false, this is, elements of truth are here, elements of truth are not there, all this stuff. So anyway, I hope you thoroughly enjoyed this episode, and hope to see you again next week. Hope this goes okay, given that I can't be responsive to your requests. But good night, and God bless.
You always